I never thought my life would unravel because of a single text message. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind of dull, ordinary night that blurs into the next. I was sitting in my favorite recliner, a half finished beer sweating on the side table, the faint hum of a baseball game murmuring from the TV. My wife, Linda, was upstairs, probably scrolling through her phone or pretending to work on one of her endless craft projects. We'd been married 26 years. Comfortable, predictable, or so I thought. Then my phone buzzed. At first, I assumed it was my buddy Dave, sending me another meme about golf or getting old. But when I picked it up, the name on the screen sent a cold jolt through me. Robert Carter, Linda's work friend, the guy she'd been spending a little too much time with over the past few months. Business dinners, late meetings, all the classic excuses. I'd noticed, of course, but I trusted her. Or maybe I just didn't want to face what my gut had been whispering. I opened the message. Hey, John, we need to talk. It's about Linda, and you deserve to know the truth. My fingers tightened around the phone. The room suddenly felt too warm, too small. Know what truth? That he'd been sleeping with my wife? That their affair was some grand romance while my marriage was a lie? I should have ignored it. Should have deleted it and confronted Linda first. But something in me, some mix of anger and morbid curiosity, made me reply, "What the hell are you talking about?" The three dots appeared immediately, like he'd been waiting. Then, "It's not what you think. Meet me tomorrow, noon, the diner on Fifth. Please." I stared at the screen, my pulse thudding in my ears. Not what I think. What else could it be? I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I walked into the diner with my jaw clenched, my hands shoved deep in my pockets. The place was all chrome and cracked vinyl, the smell of coffee and bacon thick in the air. And there he was, Robert, early 50s, salt and pepper hair, dressed in a crisp button down like he was heading back to the office. He saw me and nodded, his expression unreadable. I slid into the booth across from him, not bothering with pleasantries. Start talking. Robert took a slow sip of his coffee, then met my eyes. Linda doesn't know I'm here. Obviously, I snapped. So what's this about? You two having some kind of fling? He shook his head. No, it's more complicated than that. I leaned forward, my voice low, then uncomplicated. Robert exhaled, rubbing his temple. John, Linda came to me a few months ago. She was confused. About you. About your marriage. I stiffened. What? She told me you've been distant. That you two haven't been intimate in years. That she misses you, but she doesn't know how to reach you anymore. The words hit like a punch. Because they were true. The late nights I spent zoning out in front of the TV. The way I'd stopped holding her hand. The excuses I made when she tried to talk about us. Robert continued, quieter now. She loves you, John, but she's lonely. And I care about her, but not the way you think. I frowned. Then why the hell are you telling me this? He hesitated. Then, to my shock, his voice cracked. Because I've been where you are. I lost my wife because I stopped seeing her. I don't want that to happen to you. For the first time, I really looked at him, saw the regret in his eyes, the sincerity. This wasn't some affair partner gloating. This was a man trying to save me from the same mistake he'd made. And that changed everything. I sat there, staring at Robert, my mind racing. The diner noise faded into the background. Clinking silverware, murmured conversations, the occasional laugh. All of it distant, unimportant. She misses you, but she doesn't know how to reach you anymore. How long had it been since I really listened to Linda? Since I looked at her the way I did when we first met? Robert watched me, his fingers tapping lightly against his coffee cup. I know this isn't easy to hear. I let out a slow breath. You're damn right it isn't. He nodded like he expected that. But I figured you want to know before it was too late. I studied him, his expression, his posture. No smugness, no guilt, just concern. Why you? I asked, why not just let us drift apart if that's what was happening? Robert leaned back, his gaze drifting to the window for a second before returning to me. Like I said, I've been there. My ex-wife, Karen, we were married 22 years. One day, she told me she felt like a ghost in our own house. I laughed it off, thought she was being dramatic. He paused, his jaw tightening. 6 months later, she left. I swallowed. That hit too close to home. Linda had made comments like that before. You don't even see me anymore. I'd always brushed it off, assuming she was just in a mood. But what if she wasn't? I rubbed my temples. So what now? You're some kind of marriage counselor? A faint smile tugged at his lips. No, just a guy who doesn't want to watch someone else make the same mistake I did. I exhaled sharply, my pride warring with a sinking realization that he might be right. Look, Robert said, lowering his voice. Linda hasn't crossed any lines with me. But if things don't change, she might with someone else. And I don't think either of us wants that. A cold knot formed in my stomach. He wasn't threatening me. He was warning me. And the worst part? I believed him. That night, I sat on the edge of our bed, watching Linda brush her hair in the mirror. She caught my reflection and smiled, that same warm, familiar smile that had greeted me for decades. But now, I saw the hesitation behind it. The loneliness. You okay? She asked. I hesitated. Then, before I could second-guess myself, we need to talk. Her hand stilled. About what? About us. The words hung in the air, heavy and fragile at the same time. Linda turned slowly, her eyes searching mine. For the first time in years, I didn't look away. And just like that, the dam broke. Linda set down her hairbrush slowly, her fingers lingering on the dresser like she needed the support. The silence between us was thick, charged like the air before a storm. We need to talk about us. I hadn't planned to say it like that. Hell, I hadn't planned to say it at all. But now that it was out, there was no taking it back. She turned fully toward me, her face unreadable. Okay, she said softly. Let's talk. I expected defensiveness, anger, even, but the quiet resignation in her voice cut deeper than any argument could have. I patted the bed beside me. Sit down? She hesitated, then joined me, leaving just enough space between us to remind me how far we drifted. The scent of her lavender lotion, the same kind she'd used for 20 years, hit me with a wave of nostalgia. When was the last time I'd noticed that smell? I cleared my throat. I met with Robert today. Her spine straightened almost imperceptibly. Oh, he told me you've been unhappy. A humorless laugh escaped her. That's one way to put it. The bitterness in her tone startled me. Why didn't you tell me? Tell you? She turned to face me, her eyes glistening. John, I have told you. For years. You just stopped listening. The accusation hung between us. I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it, because she was right. How many times had she tried to talk about our lack of intimacy? Our non-existent date nights? The way we become roommates instead of lovers? I dismissed it every time. We're just busy. This is what long marriages are like. Bullshit excuses to avoid facing the truth. I ran a hand through my graying hair. I didn't realize it was this bad. Of course you didn't. She wiped at her cheek hastily. You've been checked out for so long. I'm surprised you noticed anything at all. The words stung, but they weren't unfair. I'd been on autopilot, coasting through our marriage while she'd been drowning in silence. I reached for her hand, hesitant, like I wasn't sure I still had the right to touch her. To my surprise, she didn't pull away. I'm sorry, I said, the words rough in my throat. For all of it. Her fingers trembled in mine. Me too. We sat like that for a long moment, the weight of 2 decades of unspoken regrets pressing down on us. Then, quietly, she asked the question I'd been dreading. What happens now? The question hung between us like a hell breath. What happens now? I didn't have an answer. Not a real one. But for the first time in years, I wanted to find one. I squeezed Linda's hand. We try, I said quietly, if you're willing. Her eyes searched mine, and I saw the war behind them. Hope battling decades of disappointment. Before she could respond, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Robert's name flashed on the screen. Linda's grip tightened around mine. "You've been talking to him a lot today." There was no accusation in her tone, just genuine curiosity. I hesitated, then picked up the phone. He sent me something. The message was a single line. "There's more you should know. Can we meet tomorrow? Same place." I showed it to Linda. She exhaled sharply. "John, what exactly did Robert tell you?" "Just that you've been confiding in him, that you were lonely." I studied her face. Was there more? She bit her lip, a tell she'd had since our dating days when she was wrestling with something. "Linda, Robert isn't." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "He's not just some coworker being nice." A cold knot formed in my stomach. "Then what is he?" She met my eyes. "He's Karen's brother." What? The revelation hit me like a sucker punch. Robert's ex-wife, the one he'd told me about, was his sister-in-law? "That doesn't make sense," I said slowly. "He said Karen was his ex-wife." "I know." Linda's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because that's the story he tells people. The truth is, Karen was married to his brother. She left him for Robert." The pieces clicked into place with brutal clarity. Robert hadn't just lost his marriage. He destroyed his own family to get what he wanted. And now he was circling ours. I barely slept that night. Linda's revelation about Robert played on a loop in my mind. Karen was married to his brother. She left him for Robert. The way he twisted the truth at the diner, making himself seem like some wise, regretful man, left a sour taste in my mouth. At 6:03 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went to my home office, closing the door quietly behind me. The glow of my laptop screen cut through the pre-dawn darkness as I typed Robert Carter's name into the search bar. Social media profiles popped up first. Polished LinkedIn photos, a sparse Facebook page with generic vacation shots. Nothing unusual. Then I added keywords: Robert Carter brother Karen divorce. The third result made my blood run cold. A 10-year-old newspaper article from a small town in Ohio. Local love triangle ends in tragedy. The piece was brief, just 3 paragraphs about how a woman named Karen Carter had left her husband, Mark Carter, for his younger brother Robert. 2 months later, Mark had taken his own life. Jesus. I leaned back in my chair, my pulse pounding in my ears. This wasn't just some messy divorce. Robert had wrecked his own brother's life, and now he was circling my marriage with the same smooth-talking concern. But why? Revenge? Some sick pattern? A soft knock at the door startled me. Linda stood in the doorway, her robe pulled tight around her. "You're up early," she murmured. I hesitated, then turned the laptop toward her. "Did you know about this?" Her eyes skimmed the article, widening slightly. "No, he never mentioned a suicide." She sank into the chair beside me. "He only told me Karen was his sister-in-law first. Said it was a complicated family situation." I studied her face, the faint lines of exhaustion, the worry in her eyes. This wasn't her fault. She'd been lonely, and Robert had preyed on that. "John," she said quietly, "what do you think he wants with us?" I closed the laptop with a snap. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." The diner felt different this time. The clatter of dishes too loud, the smell of grease too thick. I sat in the same booth, hands clenched around a coffee I had no intention of drinking. Robert walked in right at noon, same as before. But now, knowing what I knew, I saw the cracks in his polished facade, the too casual stride, the way his eyes darted to the exit before sitting down. He opened his mouth to speak. I slid the printed article across the table. His face went pale. "Explain," I said, my voice low and dangerous. Robert exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. For the first time, he looked genuinely shaken. "It wasn't like that." "Really?" I tapped the headline. "Ends in tragedy." My finger hovered over Mark Carter's name. "Your brother." His jaw tightened. "You don't understand." "I understand you lied. You made it sound like Karen left you, when really you stole her from your own flesh and blood." Robert's composure cracked. "I didn't steal her. She was miserable with him, just like Linda's miserable with." I was halfway across the table before I realized I'd moved. The diner fell silent. A waitress froze mid-pour. Robert didn't flinch. "Go ahead," he whispered. "Prove me right." I forced myself back into the booth, my pulse roaring in my ears. "You're sick. You get off on breaking up marriages, don't you?" For a long moment, he just stared at his coffee. Then, to my shock, his eyes welled up. "Mark was depressed long before Karen," he said hoarsely. "I tried to help him. Got him therapists, medication. Nothing worked." He looked up, raw guilt etched into his face. After happened, Karen couldn't live with the guilt. Left me 6 months later. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Robert wiped his eyes roughly. "I moved states, changed jobs, but everywhere I go, I see it. Couples drifting apart like me and Karen did, like Mark and Karen did." His voice dropped. "So yes, I talk to unhappy wives. And sometimes I talk to their husbands. Because if I can stop even one person from making my mistakes." He trailed off, the unspoken before it's too late, hanging between us. I sat there, my anger unraveling into something far more complicated. Because the terrifying part? I believed him. The house was silent when I returned, the kind of heavy quiet that presses against your eardrums. Linda sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. She didn't ask how the meeting went. She just looked at me, waiting. I set my keys down carefully. He didn't deny it. Her fingers tightened around the mug. And he's a broken man, Linda, but not for the reasons we thought. I pulled out the chair across from her, the legs scraping against the tile like a flinch. His brother killed himself after the affair. Her breath hitched. "My God." "Yeah." I ran a hand over my face, suddenly exhausted. He spent the last decade trying to, I don't know, atone by intervening in marriages like ours before they collapse. Linda's laugh was sharp, humorless. "So what were his redemption project?" "Maybe." I met her eyes. "But that doesn't mean he's wrong about us." The air between us shifted. This wasn't about Robert anymore. Linda set the mug down with deliberate precision. "Do you remember our 15th anniversary?" The question caught me off guard. Vaguely. "We went to that bed and breakfast in Vermont. It rained the whole weekend." She traced the rim of the mug. "You spent hours on the porch, reading some thriller novel. I sat inside watching old movies alone." Her voice softened. "That's when I realized we'd become strangers who share a bed." The memory rushed back with brutal clarity. Me grumbling about the weather, her silent disappointment. I'd been relieved when we left early. "I thought you wanted space." I admitted. She shook her head. "I wanted you to fight for us. Just once." The raw pain in her voice undid me. How many times had I taken the easy way out? Chosen silence over conflict, distance over vulnerability? I reached across the table, covering her hand with mine. "What if I fight now?" Her fingers trembled beneath my palm. "It's been so long, John." "I know." My throat tightened. "But I'm still here. And so are you. That's got to count for something." For the first time in years, maybe decades, we really looked at each other, not as the people we'd become, but as the ones who'd fallen in love half a lifetime ago. Linda turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through mine. "Where do we even start?" The answer came easier than I expected. "Let's start by listening." The package arrived on a Tuesday, a plain brown cardboard box with no return address, but the postmark showed it came from 2 states over. Linda carried it inside, her brow furrowed as she sat on the kitchen counter between us. "You think it's from him?" she asked, though we both knew the answer. I grabbed a steak knife from the drawer and slit the tape. The flaps fell open to reveal 3 items. A well-worn leather journal, a faded photograph of 2 boys fishing, an unsealed envelope with my name scrawled across it. Linda sucked in a sharp breath when she saw the photo. "That's Robert, with his brother." The younger boy in the picture, couldn't have been more than 10, grinned with missing front tooth, his arm slung around an older teen who shared his nose but none of his joy. Even in this decades-old snapshot, you could see the shadows under Mark Carter's eyes. I set the photo aside and opened the journal first. The entries weren't dated, but the handwriting changed over time, sometimes neat and measured, other times a frantic scrawl. Random passages jumped out at me. Karen made his favorite meal tonight. He didn't eat a bite. The doctor says it's clinical depression, as if giving it a name helps. She kissed me today. We both cried afterward. Linda's fingers hovered over that last entry. My God, they were living in hell long before the affair. The envelope contained a single sheet of notebook paper with just 7 words. Don't let your guilt become your marriage. No signature. No explanation. Linda turned the paper over, as if more words might appear. That's it? After everything? But I understood. The journal wasn't an apology. It was a warning. Robert wasn't giving us answers. He was showing us the exact moment his life had veered off course. I picked up the fishing photo again, studying the younger Robert's carefree smile. He's not the villain, is he? Linda surprised me by taking my hand. No, just a man who made terrible choices and never figured out how to live with them. She squeezed my fingers. Unlike us, the weight of what we'd avoided settled over me. We could have become this, two ghosts haunting each other with might-have-beens. Instead, we were here, alive, trying. I slid everything back into the box. Should we keep it? Linda thought for a moment, then shook her head. Some ghosts don't belong to us. We burned the journal in the backyard fire pit that night, watching the pages curl into ash. The photograph, though, that I tucked into my wallet, a reminder of how thin the line is between wisdom and ruin. The garage smelled of motor oil and forgotten things. Sunlight cut through the grimy windows as I pulled open the last storage bin, the one marked Zmaz decorations in Linda's looping handwriting. Beneath a tangle of lights, my fingers brushed cold metal. A small lockbox. Not ours. The hinges groaned when I pried it open. Inside lay 3 items that sent my pulse racing. A positive pregnancy test, faded with age. A hospital bracelet dated 22 years ago. A tiny blue sweater never worn. The world tilted. I was still kneeling there when Linda's shadow filled the doorway. John. Her voice cracked when she saw what I held. All the pieces snapped together. The emergency trip to visit her sister that summer, the way she'd wept for weeks after, the way we'd never. You were pregnant. The words tasted like rust. She leaned against the doorframe, her face ashen. 12 weeks. I lost a baby at Jenny's house. The grief hit me like a freight train, not just for the child I never knew existed, but for the woman who'd carried that pain alone. Why didn't you tell me? Linda sank onto an overturned bucket, her hands trembling. You just lost a plant job. We could barely pay rent. She touched the tiny sweater with one finger. And you never seemed to want kids. The unspoken truth hung between us. I might have blamed you. I stared at the test strip, the faint second line barely visible now. A life that could have been. A crossroads we'd passed without realizing it. We should have grieved together. I whispered. Her tears fell then, splashing onto the concrete floor. I didn't know how to tell you I'd failed. I pulled her onto the dusty garage floor, holding her as sobs racked her body. The lockbox sat between us, its contents finally breathing after 2 decades in darkness. Later, we buried the sweater beneath the oak tree in the backyard. No words, no ceremony, just hands clasped tight as the sun dipped below the horizon. That night, for the first time in years, Linda fell asleep with her head on my chest. And for the first time ever, I understood how much silence can cost. The doorbell rang at 7:32 p.m. on an ordinary Thursday. I was grating cheese for Linda's famous chili when the chime echoed through the house. Through the kitchen window, I saw her pause in the garden, trowel hovering over the soil as she turned toward the front porch. By the time I wiped my hands and reached the foyer, Linda was already at the door, but she wasn't opening it. She stood frozen, her palm flat against the wood like she could read the presence on the other side through touch alone. Who is it? I asked. She didn't answer, just turned the knob with trembling fingers. The young man on our porch couldn't have been more than 22. Dark hair, broad shoulders, with nervous energy thrumming through his stance. But it was his eyes that stole my breath. Linda's exact shade of hazel, right down to the gold flecks. Mrs. Wilkins? He shifted his weight from foot to foot. I'm Noah Carter. The name hit like a lightning strike. Carter. Linda made a small, wounded sound in her throat. Noah rushed on. Robert was my uncle. He left me a letter when he passed last month. Said there was something I needed to know about. His gaze flicked to me, then back to Linda. About my adoption. The porch light buzzed overhead. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. Then Linda did the last thing I expected. She reached out and touched his face. You have your father's chin, she whispered. The world narrowed to that single moment. The way Noah's eyes widened, the way Linda's fingers trembled against his stubble, the way 22 years of history collapsed between us. I stepped forward on unsteady legs. Maybe we should all sit down. Noah exhaled sharply. So it's true. Linda didn't hesitate. You were born November 17th at 4:18 a.m. 6 pounds, 7 ounces. Her voice broke. You had your grandfather's cowlick. The boy, our son, swallowed hard. Why did you give me up? The real question hung unspoken. Why didn't you want me? Linda looked at me then, her eyes brimming with decades of grief and guilt. And suddenly, I understood this wasn't just about the miscarriage. There had been 2 babies, 2 losses, one taken by chance, the other by choice. I reached for them both, my hands bridging the gap between past and present. Let's start from the beginning. As we led Noah inside, the last pieces of our fractured history finally clicked into place. And for the first time in 22 years, the ghost in our marriage had a name. Noah sat at our kitchen table, sunlight glinting off the folded paper he'd placed between us like a live grenade. The edges were frayed from where he'd clearly opened and refolded 100 times. Read it, he said quietly. Linda reached out first. Her hands shook as she unfolded Robert's final words. Noah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if you're standing on a Wilkins porch, then I kept at least one promise in this life. Mark wasn't just my brother. He was your biological father. That summer after high school, when he went to stay with Aunt Deb, he got a girl pregnant. A girl whose parents forced her to give you up before she even held you. I paid off the adoption agency to place you with Karen and me after the divorce. Figured it was the least I could do for Mark's kid. But here's what your mother never knew. John and Linda Wilkins were supposed to be your real parents. They'd been approved to adopt just months before. Linda even picked out your name. Then she lost their biological baby, and John backed out. Said he couldn't handle raising some stranger's kid. I've spent 22 years wondering if I should tell you, wondering if they deserve the pain. But blood matters, Noah. So here's your choice. Meet the man who rejected you, or walk away and live free of ghosts. Either way, you were always loved. Robert, the lie hit me like a sucker punch. That's not what happened. I choked out. Linda made a wounded sound beside me. We never even got to the adoption interviews. They rejected us after miscarriage because her voice shattered, because I checked myself into the psych ward for postpartum depression. Noah's face went pale. So he engineered this? The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity. Robert tracking our adoption attempt, sabotaging it, then raising Mark's son himself like some twisted penance. And now, even from the grave, he'd found a way to drive the knife deeper. I reached for Noah's arm. Look at me. We didn't reject you. We grieved for you. The boy, Mark's son, Robert's pawn, the child we dreamed of, stared at the letter like it might burst into flames. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. All my life, I thought Karen was my real mom. Then the letter said she wasn't. Then you said the letter's a lie. He looked up, eyes glistening. Who the hell am I supposed to believe? Linda did something then that shattered me. She knelt beside his chair like a supplicant. Believe this, she said, pressing his hand to her tear-streaked cheek. You're home. And for the first time in 22 years, all 3 of us cried for the same loss. Noah moved in the following weekend. He arrived with nothing but a duffel bag and a cardboard box labeled Robert's stuff in messy Sharpie. We set him up in the old guest room, the one Linda had once half converted into a nursery before packing away in grief. I found her in there at 3 a.m. that first night, smoothing fresh sheets over the mattress with trembling hands. "He's down the hall," she whispered when she saw me. "Our son is right down the hall." The wonder in her voice undid me. We spent the next month in a strange, beautiful limbo, learning each other like explorers mapping uncharted territory. Noah hated tomatoes, but loved ketchup. Linda still hummed lullabies while doing dishes. I snored when sleeping on my back. Tiny, ordinary discoveries that felt like miracles. Then came the afternoon. Noah dragged Robert's box into the living room. "We should burn it," he said, jaw set. Linda reached in first. Her fingers closed around a small spiral notebook, the kind teachers use for attendance. When she flipped it open, we saw the columns. Names, dates, adoption agency case numbers. Dozens of entries. Noah made a strangled sound. He was tracking all of them? I scanned the list, my stomach churning. Robert hadn't just meddled with our lives. He'd played puppet master with countless couples, shuffling children like chess pieces in some warp redemption game. Linda closed the book gently. "We should contact them." Noah stiffened. "Why?" "So they can relive their trauma like we did." "So they know they weren't alone," she said softly. That's when I realized this was how we'd break Robert's last hold on us. Not by hiding from the pain, but by turning it into something that healed. One rainy Sunday, we drove to Mark Carter's grave. Noah brought fishing lures to leave by the headstone. "Since I never got to learn from him," he said. Linda placed a bundle of lavender from her garden. I left a pocket knife, the same kind my own father had given me at 13. Standing there, 3 generations of unintended family. Noah said the words we'd all been thinking. Robert was wrong about one thing. He wiped his face with his sleeve. Blood isn't what matters. Linda took his hand. I took hers. And in that moment, we weren't a broken family patched together by tragedy. We were simply family, flawed, scarred, and fiercely ours. Back home, we didn't burn Robert's box. We repurposed it, filling it with new memories. Movie ticket stubs from our first outing as 3. The chili recipe Noah begged Linda to teach him. The keys to the used truck we surprised her with on his 23rd birthday. The past didn't disappear. The grief didn't vanish. But every morning now, when I walk in the kitchen and see my wife laughing with the sun we thought we'd lost forever, I understand the final, fragile truth. Some loves arrive broken. The miracle isn't in how they came to be, but in how we choose to mend them. 6 months later, John and Linda formally adopt Noah. Not to replace the parents he loved, but to honor the family they built. The notebook of names remains unburned. They've contacted 7 couples so far. Some wanted answers. Others wanted closure. All thanked them for breaking Robert's silence.